With the best brand of football in Idaho, this is the 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It's another edition of the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. And yes, for the second time in 3 weeks, my name is Brandon Baney, broadcasting from the road in Montana, here in the spare bedroom at my parents' house. Glad to be here, though, to break down the 8-man game. Let's introduce you to our panelists here on tonight's show. We missed you 2 weeks ago, the first time I was doing the show from the spare bedroom, but now Coach gets to see it in all its glory. It is Coach Lane Kirkland from Cary High School.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. Good to see you. Comfortable and, on the road again to another location tomorrow. Oh, I'm glad to be on the show again tonight.
Yes, I'm headed to East Idaho tomorrow, and since I live in Coeur d'Alene now, everything's a 2-day journey. So let's bring in also Will Hoenike, better known as Idaho 8-Man on X. Will, what's up?
Coming to you live from the kitchen once again. So if Josh is watching, we got some leftover fries on the stove that I can box up for him.
For sure. The Idaho 8-Man Prepcast is brought to you by Ideal, Idaho's college savings program. It's also brought to you by the Idaho Transportation Department. And we will talk more about Ideal and IdahoSports.com teaming up for a cool giveaway to one lucky athlete or student from a 1A or 2A school. That'll come up a little bit later on in the show. But guys, we always start the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast with the game of the week. Just what was the most exciting game start to finish? I really could have gone with Genesee for like the third week in a row. They had another game where they knocked away a Hail Mary essentially as time expired, but I figured let's give the love to somebody else. This non-conference matchup between Dietrich and Rockland not only was great on paper, but it delivered on the field as well. Will, Dietrich trailed 20-6 at halftime, and from what I gathered, Connor Perkins wasn't playing, and then all of a sudden he went and said, hey, I'm good to go. Put me in there. And they took off in that second half, and they get the come from behind 30-26 victory.
Yeah, Perkins came back in the game and had a fantastic second half. Wyatt Snedden had a big game as well. And for the second time in 3 weeks, Rockland had an injury at quarterback as Isaac Held went down with an injury. No word yet on how long he may be out. So they had to turn it over to Zachary Perman, who did a really nice job. I mean, you're talking about two really good football teams here. And essentially, one was playing with their starting quarterback at half the game. Another one played without its starting quarterback altogether and then lost its second string quarterback during the contest. And I think it speaks really highly to both teams that they were able to grind it out and have a heck of a battle. And it was an entertaining football game. And Dietrich wound up getting the close win.
Yeah, Coach Kirkland. Connor Perkins comes in that second half for Dietrich. He has 88 yards rushing, 85 yards passing, a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, and he came away with an interception on defense. He pretty much contributed in every facet of the game there for Dietrich.
Yeah, definitely a difference maker. When I talked to Coach Garrett Estelle the other day, he had few words, but the one he used was as Perkins is elusive and made some great decisions. And that seemed to be the difference in the ballgame.
And I think also something that would warm your heart, Coach Kirkland, 6 times Rockland went for it on fourth down. 6 times that Dietrich defense got the stop and turned them away. That's big.
Yeah, defense won that game.
For sure.
I mean, 30-26 in an 8-man game, and Coach, you can attest to this. That is a defensive game. I mean, that's a struggle when you're getting some stops and you're making teams drive the field. Somebody from Bora or Hillcrest or Lewiston might be thinking 30-26. Well, remember, you got 3 less guys to cover the exact same amount of field, so you can get some pretty wonky scores up there. And 30-26 is a pretty good defensive effort by both teams.
Yeah, definitely a battle there. Coach Hunter from Rockland talked about causing 5 turnovers as well in that game, so maybe a balance between both there is why that score ended up so close. But great efforts by both teams with especially Rockland with their third string quarterback up to bat, and Perkins coming in and saving the day.
It was just a fun game all around between Rockland and Dietrich, and it wouldn't shock me if we see those two meet up again this time, though, in the postseason. So the question I was going to ask you, and I'll ask each of you, we'll start with Coach Kirkland. Is this the year we see 1A kind of be ruled by defense? You know, the last few years with Kendrick and its video game like offense, it's been about points. But now it seems like we've kind of settled in, and there's some like really tough, gritty 1A football teams that are really leaning on their defense to get the job done.
Yes, so far some of the scores aren't as high as we've seen when these tight matches or the blowouts that we've seen in the past is 60 points here and there, so to speak. A lot of these teams only have seems to be one or two kids kind of carrying the load most of the time instead of 3 or 4. And so the defenses are stepping up and kind of even in the playing field here. So defense is going to make a big difference this year.
Yeah. Well, I know. Historically, I know you always look at the points per game allowed and points per game scored. Where are we lining up with years past?
It's down a little bit, but I wouldn't say egregiously so. I think the margins are what have tightened up. We've seen more close games and fewer of the at least in an anecdotal perspective. I'd have to actually go back and do the hard counting, but there have been a lot more games that have been. I'm trying to remember what it was, Brandon, and I know it was on the list. There was an 8-man team that they are in a 1A team. A 1A versus a 2A, and the final score was, I believe, 24-12. I mean, that's dang near 7-0 in 11-man terms. So I think we're seeing more of those types of games, and especially in the 1A classification. I just think there's a lot more balance than we're used to. I think that Carey and Dietrich, the coaches having them 1 and 2 in the poll, I think is pretty accurate, and we're starting to see that come into focus a little bit. But those are two teams that they don't need to score 60 points to beat you. They're going to make you work on defense, and you're going to have to score some points to beat them because they're pretty good on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure. Here's Howard Wood in the chat. I'm late. What did I miss? We recapped that Rockland Dietrich game. It was really fun, Howard. The good news is, if you didn't catch it live, we are broadcasting live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. You can always watch it on replay anytime after the show is over at those same 3 destinations, or you can listen to this podcast at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts. So we only got 1 game in, but now we're going to pick it up a little bit. In Montana, where I'm at right now, guys, there was a game last week. It was an 11-man game. The final score was 3-2. How about that?
Great relief pitching by someone.
Wow. Hockey.
Yeah.
And it was in the biggest classification too. So these are like big schools. 3-2 final score. Okay, let's look at the rest of the 1A landscape. We'll start with districts 4, 5, and 6. They all kind of played each other in these crossover games. Well, North Gem got that big win over Castleford, and we were pretty bullish on the Cowboys. But man, Shoshone, I think this one was. You raise your eyebrows a little bit. Shoshone 28, North Gem 14, the final score. This was a big win for the Indians.
And Coach Mike Nunnally of Shoshone, the thing that when I was able to contact him, the thing that he seemed the most excited about it was his defense. You're talking about a North Gem team that is, it's not uncommon to see them running as a team for 300, 400 yards a game, and to hold them to 14 points and force a handful of turnovers. And he said they had 7 tackles for loss. There was a lot to be excited for if you're a Shoshone fan. And on the other side of the coin with North Gem, you got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. And I understand that they lack some depth. They don't have huge numbers. And they are who they are in terms of the way they play football. And Corey Hatch isn't going to change. But that's going to be one that they're going to look back at the end of the year and say, hey, that's one that we've got to take care of. Give the credit to Shoshone for coming in and kind of punching North Gem in the mouth and beating them. They earned it. They deserved it. But North Gem is most likely going to look back at that one and say that's one that got away from us.
Yeah, Hadley Hayden, 16 carries, 105 yards. Bud Cortez, 12 carries, 97 yards. Kind of the dynamic duo there running the ball for Shoshone. And then you mentioned it, Will, 7 tackles for loss, 2 fumble recoveries from that Shoshone defense. Mike Nunnally, who previously coached at Marcine, So he knows a thing or two about it, and he's coached a couple other places as well, but he's kind of known for, trying to lift up programs that have been struggling. And so for Shoshone, I mean, what a fantastic, start for them, 28-14 final. And then we have this game with Mackey and Camas County. Camas County leads 22-12 at halftime. Mackey then outscores the Mushers 14-0 in the third quarter. Nobody scores in the fourth. Coach Kirkland, Mackey, and we saw this a lot. We saw Dietrich come from behind, multiple scores to win. Mackey came from behind, multiple scores to win. It's pretty impressive to see these teams, not fold and continue to fight and be resilient.
Yeah, halftime adjustments are critical, and some teams really have that second half game plan already put in place and then take action with it and are very effective. I know over the years when they played Lighthouse, their second half adjustments were tough to coach against, and Mackey came up with a great plan and got those 2 scores, and then once again played some tough defense, shut out the whole half, which is good for the Miners, and they're on a roll, and some success there to build on for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Tayson Bruley threw 2 touchdown passes, one to Cooper Holt, one to Dax Tykert. Grayson Chandler and Gabriel Hewish also scored rushing touchdowns for Mackey in the victory. And then Chalice got a nice win over Richfield, doubling up the Tigers 44-22. Richfield is playing a full varsity schedule for the first time in several years this season. So in terms of the week 4 schedule, guys, here's what we've got going on. And these are graphics that I make for our Gem State Game Day show that we do on Thursday mornings. But I thought we could start using them here as well because it's a little easier to look at and it definitely applies. So here's what we've got for the 1A slate in this upcoming week of action. The standings are on the left, and then the games are on the right. Specifically, we're looking at the Sawtooth Conference, the Rocky Mountain Conference. We've got Camas County taking on Dietrich. League play finally begins. Castle Ford's going to play Cary. Richfield and Hanson will get it going as well. And then over in the Rocky Mountain Conference, Chalice and Rockland will play, and Water Springs and North Gem. So we're finally into league play here, Will. Which game from districts 4, 5, and 6 are you most excited?
I'm excited by a lot of them. I want to see primarily how North Gem bounces back. I think that's a program with a lot of pride and a lot of success. And, Coach Hatch and those kids, I'm sure, are working their tails off at practice this week and ready to show that last week was not indicative of who they are. So I'm really intrigued to see how they put it together on the field tomorrow.
And Coach Kirkland, which game are you looking at?
So I think the most evenly matched game amongst all of those is going to be Richfield and Hanson, but I'm most intrigued by Mackey and Tri-Valley to see where they're both had coming off of wins, meeting up with each other, maybe for the first time ever. I don't know where that game is being played. Brandon, maybe.
Gooding. They're playing it in Gooding, right up the road from you, Coach.
Hey, all right. Well, maybe I'll make a road trip up there and see, but those should be good matchups for those 2 clubs.
Yeah, that'll be a Saturday afternoon contest in Gooding, and you'll see that it's under the Long Pin Conference there, Mackey and Tri-Valley. That's going to be a fun one for sure, and it's going to be an intriguing one as well. Okay, we'll get back to the schedule of games, as we continue to break it down league by league. But let's talk about that Long Pin Conference. That's where Tri-Valley is. But I wanted to start with Garden Valley. They finally got their season started. Their season opener 2 weeks ago was postponed due to the smoke from the wildfires, or basically canceled. They get to play a Castle Ford team that already had a game under its belt. Coach Kirkland, Garden Valley comes out, looks pretty impressive, 46-16. I know you caught up with both coaches after this game. What did each camp have to say?
It literally was a camp. Honestly, talking to Coach Yearsley, had a great practice Thursday night and rolled into Castle Ford Valley and with his camper and set up camp for the night. And his team met him there the next day, and they played a good ball game. They had 5 guys at quarterback. 5 guys at quarterback. Did you hear that? It's 5 guys at quarterback, which is unheard of. 13 of 20 passing, 4 of them threw passes, 2 of them threw touchdowns. 229 yards in the air, a quarterback rating of 143. Now that's a pretty good average for 5 dudes in there. And Max Yearsley was winning was the fifth one. He went in the wildcat spot. He didn't get to throw, but I'm sure he did some damage on the ground there. But they spent the night that night. Their team at Balanced Rock Campground. They cooked them a bunch of hamburgers and stuff, and then the next morning, Chef Yearsley flipped some not burgers, but some probably leftover burgers, with some pancakes and some eggs. And then they went home. But I think those are great memories and great team building activities that those guys will have. It is 176 miles back to Garden Valley. But they said their team is doing well. The move with 5 quarterbacks was a positive one. They are all positive with each other, working together, just still trying to find who's who in Garden Valley. But a success on the road nonetheless. 28 ball players on that club. He talks about them being very deep and optimistic this season, going deep into November, and they certainly showed up there at Castle Ford. I did get a hold of Coach Lowry as well. He's always a fun, jovial guy to talk to. Looking forward to seeing him here in Cary tomorrow night. But he's optimistic. His kids did fight hard. They have a spunky run game and a good screen package that they put together to get those scores put on the scoreboard, and hung in there the best that they could. He's always a positive guy. So I look forward to talking to Coach Lowry, and good luck to the Wolves tomorrow night.
Yeah. What a cool story. I did not know any of this going in when I said camp. That's just, we're on the same wavelength tonight, Coach. Garden Valley, 28 guys. It's pretty impressive. I'm wondering if 5 quarterbacks, is this going to be like Survivor? Is one person going to get voted off the island, and next week it'll only be 4 quarterbacks, and then the next game it'll be 3 quarterbacks? It'll be interesting to see how that progresses as the season goes along, for sure. So
yeah, I did watch the film, and all of them very effective passing the ball or taking off and running. Just I think just enjoyed an evening. Kind of good tryout, honestly, for him. So it's kind of fun to talk.
Cool. Well, let's keep it rolling in the Long Pin Conference, Will. Salmon River hosts Timberline of Weehype and gets a 60-26 victory. Blake Shepard, 4 touchdowns on offense, 2 rushing, 2 passing, 3 interceptions on defense as well. And Devin Herzig, 124 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So we've talked about it. Salmon River finally has numbers for the first time, like a robust freshman class for the first time in a really long time. And they snapped a pretty lengthy losing streak by getting this win last week, Will.
Yeah, they'd lost 10 in a row. And the week before, they were on the field when Genesee snaps their 17-game losing streak. So they were on the wrong end of that. They come back to Riggins. They take on a Timberline team that's a little bit down, a little bit beat up right now. And Salmon River did what they needed to do. They played a good, strong game, and Coach Medley and his kids should be pretty ecstatic with the results. And you talked about Blake Shepard, contributing on both sides of the ball. Devin Herzig, we could go down the list. That whole Long Pin league, it very well could end in the exact same order as last year. But I think the bottom 3, you're talking about Horseshoe Bend, Cascade, and Salmon River, potentially they could all put some scares into those upper teams if those upper teams don't show up to play. I think that all 3 of those teams have made strides and have really improved.
Yep. And we'll talk about those 3 teams coming up here. But for Salmon River, yeah, a phenomenal win. Tri-Valley got a win last Friday as well. They played Lewis County. Jace Wagoner had 6 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. One of the rushing scores, guys, I went back and watched the film. It was like 3rd and 30, and he just took off and ran with it for an 88-yard touchdown. Moyne Ingram had 4 receiving touchdowns. Elias DeVries had 2 receiving touchdowns. So a nice win for Tri-Valley. For Lewis County on the other side, they kind of platooned quarterbacks. They went with Aiden McLeod a little bit, and then they went with a freshman quarterback, Slater Couther, in the second half. He went down early on in that second half with an injury. It was probably a 10 to 15-minute delay in the game while they attended to him. They had to load him up in the ambulance, which is, you always hate to see that. So I texted their coach, Monty Madrell, earlier this week, and he said, I think he's going to be ultimately fine. X-rays appear to be negative, and we're just waiting to have one more MRI done. Coach Madrell said Slater is in good spirits and watched the rest of the game via FaceTime from the hospital. He is a gamer, and I guarantee that as soon as he can go, we will have him back. Coach Kirkland, that's great news.
That is great news, and it's always fun to hear the rest of the story after they leave the field, and still cheering for their team and hoping for the best the rest of the season. So good positive attitudes.
For sure. And then, Will, it was a nice week for the Long Pin Conference overall. Cascade beats Wilder, a 1A over a 2A, 56-28. Horseshoe Bend beats Idaho City, 24-12. Again, a 1A over a 2A.
That's the one.
24-12. Yep, Horseshoe Bend in Idaho City. And then Rimrock was the only team from the 2A Western Idaho Conference that got a win. 49-14 over Hanson. So, I mean, the bottom line is, Will, no longer is there the safety of a guaranteed second spot to the playoffs from that Western Idaho Conference. So if you're a team like Idaho City or a team like Wilder and you want to earn an at-large spot via Max Preps, like these are the games you have to win. You can't drop games to Cascade and Horseshoe Bend.
Yeah, this was a big week for the Western Idaho Conference, and if you're a Western Idaho Conference fan, whether it's Notice, Idaho City, or Wilder, it didn't really go your way. And I think all three teams are coached well, and I think all three of them will bounce back. But there comes a point where you have to wonder, okay, maybe Rimrock is the leader in the leader in the early stages of this race here, based primarily on the fact that they won, but experienced quarterback, experienced playmakers. That's a pretty good team there. But on the flip side of the coin, the long pin, we talked about how these teams, we need to, we feel like the bottom half may be making a move. Cascade beats a 2A team. Horseshoe Bend beats a 2A team. Salmon River gets a win. That's a good week for the long pin conference.
Yep, it definitely was. Council went to Kamei and fell in a non-conference game. We'll talk more about that when we talk about the 2A White Pine League. But again, here is kind of the schedule of games for the 1A slate. Specifically in the Long Pin Conference, we have Notice at Council, Lewis County at Salmon River, Rimrock is at Horseshoe Bend, and Cascade is at Idaho City. Coach Kirkland, that Notice Council game, those are two kind of preseason favorites. That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, that's the check mark. I have a check mark next to that game to see what's going on there. A good teller to see where both ball clubs stand against each other and across the state.
And Will, we always love to compare scores. Rimrock is going to play Horseshoe Bend. Horseshoe Bend just beat Idaho City, so it seems like Rimrock and Idaho City the last couple of years, that second spot in the WIC has always come down to those two. So we could do some early, scoreboard peeking.
Correct. Yeah, we really can. And Rimrock making the journey up, and they'll be playing their second game. They played their first game last week. So they'll be going up against a Horseshoe Bend team that's got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. So a chance for the Long Pin to score another win against the mighty, dreaded, evil, dastardly Western Idaho Conference in that one. And what, I expect that to be a pretty good game. You've got Rimrock. We've talked about him for, it feels like 100 years, but Ronaldo Gomez, the do-everything superstar athlete quarterback for Rimrock. Trey Bauer, good player for Horseshoe Bend. Which team's able to impose their will, so to speak, and get the win tomorrow night?
Yep. All right, let's wrap up the 1A conversation up north in District 1's North Star League and then District 2's White Pine League. Genesee found themselves in another tight game, this time with Troy. The Bulldogs win 46-40, second week in a row. It comes down to a Hail Mary from the opposing team. Carson Warner Hall. What do you do on the Hail Mary? You knock it down. He knocked down the Hail Mary pass from Troy. 46-40, Genesee gets the win. They didn't score the go-ahead touchdown until there was about a minute left on the clock. Jackson Banks, the quarterback, ran it in for the go-ahead score, had 256 yards passing, 70 yards rushing. And now Coach Kirkland, way back at the start of the season, you picked Genesee as your one of your two favorites to get to the 1A championship game. They're going to be battle tested early on here. It's nice to see that they're in these tight games and finding ways to win.
Yeah, congratulations to Genesee. Yeah, maybe that's the spark that's gonna help them get things turned around this season and can continue on to win those close games. Gives you a lot of confidence. And congratulations to the referees for not calling pass interference to help that come to pass, whatever it may have looked like. But nonetheless, congratulations to the Bulldogs, and continue to wish you good luck, you guys.
For sure. And then, Will, in District 1's North Star League, Wallace plays Clark Fork. 60-36 victory for the Miners. I was actually pretty impressed with the way the Wampus Cats battled against what is kind of the perennial favorite in the league here. Cooper Miller throws for 381 yards, 6 touchdowns for Wallace in the victory. Emmett Miles, 4 receptions, 192 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's like Chris Carter back in the day for the Minnesota Vikings. All he does is catch touchdowns. Alex Grubbs had 158 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns for Wallace as well. But we like Wallace, obviously. But for Clark Fork, I thought, okay, they took it on the chin, but they fought back too.
They did. It was a nice step forward to them. They did some good things on offense. Solomon Holderman with a really nice game. Everett Montgomery, a really nice game. They did some good things. Now, obviously, I'm sure when Coach Patrick Young and his assistants got around and were looking at the tape, they probably looked at each other and said, okay, we got to find a way to cut down some of these big plays against us. But I do think that Clark Fork showed something in trading some punches with what looks like a really good Wallace team, frankly. And going into that game against Lakeside, I think tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, that's going to be a really, really big game there. And Clark Fork going up against, 1 week after it not going so well with Lakeside, they were able to step it up a little bit and trade some punches with a good Wallace team.
Yep. And here's the official schedule of games here for the North Star League. The White Pine League's just got the one game, Lewis County, Salmon River. There's the matchup, Coach Kirkland. Wallace at Lakeside. Each of these teams unbeaten so far. They're both 2-0 in league play. Wallace is 3-0 overall. Lakeside is 2-0 overall. That's going to be a hot ticket Friday night down there in Worley.
Yeah. Let's see if those two clubs can clash here. Will it be a defensive battle? Will they continue to score? Will the young quarterback continue to rise? And nothing's more exciting to me than checking my IdahoSports.com Friday night flash at 10:30 to see how those games turned out.
Look at you with the marketing promotional drop, Coach.
Hey, you guys are number one.
Wow.
We're trading him well.
We are. He got his read list this week. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm asking Brandon about T-shirts too. We need to make a T-shirt, fellas, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
We certainly will. The other 2 games are against out-of-state opponents. Clark Fork is going to play Superior, which is in Montana. That's no picnic. That's a tough team over there in Montana. Court of Christ is back in after a bye. They're going to play Welpinit over in Washington, and that also is a tough team. So very tough non-conference battles. And again, just an update on, we do have a couple of Mullen players that are playing over in Montana this year with St. Regis. The Mullen-St. Regis co-op is still continuing, but it's in Montana. They picked up a win over Charlo last Friday night, guys, 54-12. So the Tigers are now 1-1 in Montana play, and they are at Arlee on Friday night. Arlee has been a tough team these past couple of years, but that's your Mullen-St. Regis update as well. All right, we're going to take a break here on the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast. When we come back, we'll break down everything that happened at the 2A level last week in the 8-man game. But we'll be back right after this break. You're watching or listening to the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
Later.
Here. Girl, thank you.
Hello?
I was in an accident.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I had my seatbelt on.
This year, help dreams come true with the Ideal Idaho 529 Education Savings Program. Our easy-to-use tools make it simple to plan for your child's education. With tax benefits, ownership flexibility, Ideal is the perfect way to save for college, trade school, K-12 education, and student loan repayment. Join us at our next webinar to learn more about the 529 plan. Enrolling takes just 15 minutes and you can start with just $25. Visit idsaves.org if you would like to learn more.
Welcome back to the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, brought to you by the Idaho Transportation Department, along with Ideal, Idaho's college savings program. Guys, really cool contest that Ideal is doing in partnership with the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast. They are doing a grand prize drawing for a chance to receive a $529 contribution into an Ideal Idaho education savings account. It can be used for college, a trade school, an apprenticeship, a graduate program, and more options nationwide. You don't even need an account to enter. The contest is limited to families with children attending or planning to attend a 1A or 2A school. So this is just for our small communities here in Idaho, our 8-man communities. The deadline to enter is 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time, October 25th. If you're waiting till the last minute, I mean, okay, stay up till midnight, I guess, but you've got until October 25th, basically. And then the winner will be announced the following week on November 1st. And one lucky entrant will be randomly selected to win $529 deposited into an Ideal Idaho 529 education savings account. Will, this is such a cool idea. I love this from Ideal.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It's been a talking point for a long time in some of our smaller rural communities. Well, statewide, really, that Idaho's go-on rate is not where a lot of people would like to see it. And so if this helps push some people into whatever that higher education is, whether it's like you said, whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it's a trade school, whether it's an associate's degree at a 2-year school, it's all gravy. The data supports it really strongly that any kind of advanced education is going to help you exponentially in your future. Yeah,
$529, that gets you quite a ways. Whatever you're doing after high school. So for more information, you can go to the web address. It's on the bottom of your screen, idsaves.org/home/Idaho Sports. And you can find out more details there, but that is all from Ideal, Idaho's college savings program. All right, guys, let's talk about what happened in the 2A football ranks this past week. We got to start over in the Snake River Conference in District 4. Coach Kirkland, when I saw this final score, this was an early game last Friday night because Water Springs doesn't have lights, so they play at 4 o'clock. When I saw this final score come in, I was like, oh, we're setting the tone here on Friday night. 90-0, Hagerman gets the win.
Yeah, that's a very large score. I've been there, and sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it's manageable, and sometimes you just don't know what happened. They just start adding up so quickly. But a good ball club in Hagerman. I mean, they are certainly rolling, and I got things figured out. I'm excited to see them play this week coming up. But they have certainly put some points on the board there, and Water Springs will have to do a little bit of regrouping, but way to hang in there and finish the game.
Yeah, this was a 2A versus a 1A. Wyatt Mavencamp, a perfect 5 of 5 passing, 199 yards. All 5 completions went for touchdowns. Kai Kendall, 3 catches, 139 yards, 3 TDs. Seamus Merrill, 2 catches, 60 yards, 2 TDs. Martin Gonzalez carried the ball twice for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you can see just from the numbers that this was just simply every time Hagerman touched the ball, they scored. It wasn't a trying to run up the score type of situation. Literally, they would complete a pass, kind of like Kendrick has done over the past couple of years. They'll complete a pass, it goes for 6. They run the ball, it goes for 6. And so this Hagerman team looks like a well-oiled machine for sure. Let's talk about our IdahoSports.com Gem State game of the week last Friday night. This was a neutral site game in Fruitland between Prairie from the north, Valley from the Magic Valley. Prairie actually scored first, Will, in this game, but then Valley scored 44 consecutive points. The Vikings end up winning at 52-22. You were on the call for that game on IdahoSports.com.
Yeah, Valley looked good. Josh Hardy, the quarterback and / defensive back for Valley, another really good game, threw for 200 something yards and about 3 touchdowns. And the thing that I liked, and it's my first chance to watch Valley with my own eyes. I've watched some of the live streams on Idaho Sports, but watching them play, Hardy he's a pain in the butt if you're defensive. He's got good eyes, he's got good feet, and he's gonna find a crease. You've got to be really defensively sound against him, so you're not getting back like that. He did a really nice job throwing the ball in a position where his receiver could go and get it. He threw a couple of balls to Pedro Robles, and to Robles' credit, he had to go get the ball. But Prairie's defender was usually in good position. Like, he had good coverage. He was where he was supposed to be. But Hardy was able to put it in a position. Robles was able to go get it. That extended some drives, particularly early in the game. And then in the second half, they were just kind of able to, Anaconda squeeze the life out of the game a little bit. Though Prairie kept grinding. They got a couple of late touchdowns. But Valley, I thought, looked really, really good.
Yeah, Josh Hardy completed 75% of his passes, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pedro Robles, I really like this kid. I got to see him at the state basketball tournament last year, and he can definitely hoop. 6 catches, 102 yards, and a score. Nathan Christensen, 2 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. And then the defense, Coach Kirkland, came up with 3 sacks. Alfredo Valdez had 1.5 sacks. Aiden Malone had a sack. And Reese Balls came up with half a sack. That's pretty good production from that defense.
Yeah, pressure on the quarterback is important to disrupt the flow of things. And I think Valley is gaining and getting stronger as each week goes by. I also think this is a good test for Prairie early on to see where they're at. I know Hasselstrom will go back and regroup and get his group focused for the rest of the year. But a good test for both ball clubs and a good win for Valley.
Yeah, so Prairie scores first. Valley then has a deluge of points. Rat River played Notice. Notice scored first to go up 8-0. Then Rat River scores 60 unanswered in a 60-day win. Coach Kirkland, I think I'd be okay letting the other team score first.
It sometimes motivates you and wakes you up to the week. But the Ward brothers, some awesome stats from the Ward company. 3 of those guys, Kai Ward, Ruger Ward, and Trace Ward, all getting a pair of touchdowns throughout the game. It sounds like the Ward family is enjoying an awesome Friday nights and even better Saturday mornings.
Yep. Yeah, Kai Ruger and Trace all ran in for 2 rushing touchdowns. Kai Ward added a receiving touchdown, also a scoop and score. Took a fumble back for a touchdown as well for Rat River in their win there. And then Glens Ferry finally got to play this year. They had their season opener wiped out due to smoke. They went all the way up to Koosky to play Clearwater Valley from the White Pine League. They get out of there with a 40-22 victory. This was a pretty impressive performance for Coach Eric Stewart and the Glens Ferry Pilots.
Yeah, I had a good conversation with Alan Hutchins, the head coach in Clearwater Valley, over the weekend. And he said, look, I'm not going to be shy about it. That Glens Ferry team's going to be tough. And that echoes something that we've talked about on this show, that, they might finish last just because someone has to, and it's not going to be a reflection of who they are. I think that this is a team that is going to have a chance to compete for a playoff berth very much. And when I asked Coach Hutchins, okay, who impressed you? He goes, their nose guard, number 55, and it's Junior Sanchez. He's like, we had no answer for that kid. He was just a beast all game. He impacted the game, and it goes to show you, Coach, and I think you can vouch for this. If you're strong up front, offensively or defensively, it makes the game light years simpler.
Yeah. You win that front line, you're going to get first downs all night, and those translate into touchdowns. So that blocking is essential, and a good defensive stand all the way through is hard to beat sometimes.
What do you prefer in a nose guard, Coach Kirkland? Do you prefer the big guy like Junior Sanchez that's, tall and takes up a lot of space? Or I know some teams, Oakley did this pretty famously with Bryce Severe a couple of years ago, where you have a short, quick guy that lines up and you're hoping he can beat the guard to the gap. What do you prefer in a nose guard?
Both my sons were starting centers for back-to-back years, and they preferred the bigger guy. Even though he was a lud, they preferred the slower guy because my sons weren't that quick to slow him down. So I've always liked the big guy.
Yeah,
because those little guys can wreak havoc all day long.
Yeah. Bryce Severe, it just stands out to me when he was injured for most of the year, came back for the playoffs, and they plugged him in at nose guard, and he wrecked everybody. So, okay. Well, let's talk about what else happened in the District 4 landscape. We talked about the teams that won. Now let's talk about the 3 teams that fell. We'll start with Cary. The first Crater Bowl went to the Butte County Pirates from Arco, 40-20, the final. This is a game where, again, it's a 2A versus a 1A. I think each of these teams walks away feeling pretty good about how they performed in this one, Coach. But what did you see from this game?
Yeah, I think both teams walked away learning some things about themselves and a good battle. Cary received the opening kickoff and drove down and scored on the ground. And then 2 plays later, Butte County punched back and had a touchdown themselves. But the game changer right off the top here is after that first touchdown from the Pirates, an onside kick recovery, and then a quick score, and then another onside kick recovery. Three onside recoveries in the first half. Kind of punched the Panthers right in the mouth and set them back just a little bit. Cary hanging in there the first half. Keeping it close, a 2-score matchup there, but the Pirates coming back the second half strong. Man, those big kids from Butte County are fast and aggressive. Twitchell and Duke and Keaton Archibald had another great game, and Coden Cross getting in on the action, receiving the football. Just a really strong ball club there. Preston Wood carrying the Panthers with 27 carries and over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, getting the majority of the touches on the ground there, keeping the Panthers close. Both teams stopped each other. There could have been a couple more scores for each ball club there, but the defense has stepped up. There's still, I think, a lot of potential left in both ball clubs as the season goes on, but steel sharpens steel, and I think that's a good way to describe what happened there in the first Crater Bowl.
Yes.
The Pirates take home the rock.
That's right. The big rock crater trophy for sure. Yeah. Levi Hendricks, kind of a secret weapon for Butte County as the kicker. Last year, he successfully executed 8 onside kicks for Butte County last year. And so Coach Thorngren's going to love that I'm putting all this attention on it now, but it's kind of a secret weapon that, you got to be on your toes and ready for it for sure. So it was a nice win for Butte County. And now both teams get to cheer for each other because they're in separate classifications as well. So that's the nice part about this too. And then Will, we had Grace beat Murtaugh 50-26. Kendrick and Oakley met up for, I think, the 3rd or 4th year in a row. They played in Homedale on Saturday on IdahoSports.com. Kendrick won that game 74-8. So Grace and Kendrick picked up nice wins, and Murtaugh and Oakley, the 2 teams that were picked to tie for first in our preseason coaches poll, are both winless.
It's interesting to see, and this is part of the conversation that Coach Hutchins and I were having, is we're getting to the time of year where we're starting to feel like we kind of know what these teams are. But let's say in the case of Oakley has played Grace and they've played Kendrick. So yeah, they're 0-2, and yeah, that hasn't gone that well for them. How many other teams would be 0-2 against the exact same 2 teams? Going back to 1A, I think a lot of people are looking at Deary saying, well, Deary has played Potlatch and they've played Prairie. How many 1A teams would be 0-2 against those exact same teams? Clearwater Valley 0-2 against Logos and against Glens Ferry. So I don't know how much we know about these teams yet. I feel like we have a sense for some of them. And the big sense that I took away, I actually went down to that, since it's 15 minutes that way. I actually went to the Kendrick Oakley game. The thing that I was a little bit surprised by, I wasn't surprised that Kendrick won, and I wasn't surprised that Kendrick won by a fairly big margin, because I know Oakley's a little bit beat up. Oakley just couldn't match Kendrick. I mean, they couldn't. You know, you could see the coaching staff. I was on the Oakley sideline. You know, they shuttled some guys in and out. They tried a few different things, and they just did not have the personnel available to them at 100% in that game to go toe to toe with the Kendrick. So now, how does that spin forward? Number one, if you're Oakley, you've got to get healthy. They've got some kids that are beat up, some kids that are hurt. You got to get some of those kids back on the field, number one. And number two, you got to start having some success. Because, again, Coach, I defer to you a lot on this because you've got a ton of experience on this. I know it from coaching baseball here in Parma. You know, you can be a pretty good baseball team. You can be a pretty good football team. You can be a pretty good hockey team. You can be a pretty good whatever. You get dummied a couple of times in a row, it messes with your psyche a little bit. And I still think Oakley has the potential to be a decent team, a playoff team, a team that you can't look over, but they've got to start finding some success.
Well, it doesn't get any easier. The next 3 games on the schedule for Oakley: Raft River, Valley, Hagerman. All those, I mean, it's a gauntlet in that league. And,
Yep.
and that's what allows us to transition into a new segment we're going to try out each week here on the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast. We're going to take you to the coach's corner. I mean, we've got one of the best coaches in Idaho history, 8-man or 11-man, on our show in Coach.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
Well, you know, baseball, different sport, Will, for sure.
JV, small school baseball, I'm your man.
For sure.
I'd go for you, Will.
But we thought, I mean, geez, we've got Coach Kirkland on, and we should try and at least tap into that, you know, that galaxy-sized brain of his a little bit and learn a little bit about some football philosophies and things like that. So the topic we wanted to dive into in our first Coach's Corner segment, Coach Kirkland, was goals. Setting goals at the start of the year versus, okay, now we may have to adjust our goals a little bit. What's the map look like? And so it's an interesting topic. How do you go about setting goals? How do you figure out what you want to do with that?
Right. So I'll try and keep this 40-minute speech to a lot less than that, like 3 maybe. But setting goals are important. I know it sounds like a boring subject, but it's really important. Number one, kids need direction. They need a daily visual, and they need a purpose. And if they don't know what those are, then you're just going to go in circles. And time goes by pretty fast. I mean, here we are already week 3 coming up. And we need to see where the barometer is of our team. So goals are going to help you achieve greater success and perform above your potential. And it all starts, Brandon, you can fly that up there, with us coaches. All right. And I got Brandon running my graphics for me on the other side there. Us coaches need to have our own goals. After all, we are the leaders. We're asked to lead our communities, our schools, our ball clubs, and perform in the state. And so these are the goals that we had set as my staff for us as coaches, and they were hung in the locker room and outside on the bulletin. So my athletes knew exactly where we wanted them to go as well. And that's the goals we set. Have a positive relationship with these athletes. Teach them lifelong characteristics through the game of football. My goal and our goal as a staff was to continue our tradition, winning at Cary School. And then, of course, it's important to assist them in the classroom. So setting goals as a staff is real important. And then looking at those and monitoring the direction you've gone in from week to week is key to guiding your ball club to the most success possible. Hey, and then maybe the next one, Brandon, your team needs to have some goals as well. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir to some of you, but some may not. We had our seniors all get together and they came up with team goals. Okay, and here's just a splatter of them. There's been different ones over the years, but these are also posted in the coach's office and in the locker room where they can see them every day. And they can be as high as you want. Our program at Cary, we set the bar high. We want to be the conference champions, and we want to win state every year. Maybe that's not what your ball club has to offer, but perhaps going 500 might be a good goal for you to win, or win all of your home games, or win all possible games that look good to you. And you could list those specifically. Practice attendance over the years has become an issue, I think, throughout the state. And so a practice attendance goal, getting everyone there is critical to preparation. And then your rivals, man, who are they? Are they, do you have the bullseye on these guys? You know, is it beat Oakley? Is it beat Lighthouse? Whoever your rival is it beat Kendrick? Put that on the schedule. Otherwise, those kids aren't thinking about that all season long, because that's what you live for, is a rival game on Friday night under the lights. And so mark them. And maybe you just will get that upset win or continue your streak over your opponent. Win the turnover ratio and penalty tally. I didn't get specific with these goals, like hold our opponents to under 300 yards rushing. I think sometimes those goals are irrelevant in 8-man football, because one 80-yard run just destroyed your entire goal. But maybe limit these guys in their run game, or shut it down as best possible is a good generic goal, but you at least can achieve that, and achieving is success, and will drive you the rest of the season. And I think the kids need to have fun in football. It's a game, and we need to have fun as coaches. Sometimes we can get a little too serious, I think, in this game. And we need to turn and look and say, oh, these guys are 16 years old, man. It might not be their whole life. It might be ours, but we need to make sure they have fun along the way and have a positive experience. So that's kind of my takeaway for setting goals. One last thing, individual goals for team players. We always give kids a 3x5 card 2 or 3 different times a year, and have them set 3 goals in their locker as what they want to accomplish themselves. And they see those every time they put their dirty, stinky shoes on. And it reminds them of who they're supposed to be, and where the direction they need to go. We also asked them to put a quote in their locker to live by. And it didn't matter what the quote was, if it was Ricky Bobby or Clint Eastwood, just something to motivate them and to drive them to greatness, or a David Goggins, something to help them achieve above their potential, because that's important. So that's Coach Kirkland's corner for the first week here. Hopefully I can help your program succeed, and or a reminder of the great things you already do.
Yeah, I love that breakdown, and that's what we're hoping to do every week in the Coach's Corner. You're right. Without goals, you're kind of rudderless, you're directionless. You need something to keep you focused. And I also like that you had the players come up with their own goals, or you met with your seniors and set some team goals, because now they have ownership in it too. It's not just the coaches handing down a list of mandates, right? There's some ownership from the players. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All are important. The goals are important.
So some teams that have not gotten off to the starts that they wanted to this year, may have to adjust some of their goals and start finding those small wins. And then hopefully those can translate into larger wins. But that was our first Coach's Corner with Coach Lane Kirkland. And we're always looking for good topics, good feedback. And so if you have an idea or something you want to run by Coach Kirkland, you can always send me an email, Brandon at IdahoSports.com, and I'll make sure Coach Kirkland gets it. So go ahead and send all of your good info or topics you want us to explore. You can send them in again to Brandon at IdahoSports.com. All right, guys, let's wrap up with the White Pine League up north. Logos beats Lapway 60-8. Seamus Wilson, 172 passing yards in the victory. They're now 2-1 overall, 2-0 in the White Pine League. Kamei beat Council in that non-conference game, 44-16. Everett Outman, 8 carries, 101 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dave Clute, 10 of 11 passing, 96 yards, 2 scores. So Kamei is off to a nice start. They're 2-0 on the season. And then Potlatch beats Deary 36-14. Jay Marshall throws 4 touchdowns for the Loggers, also had a rushing score. Another game where Deary actually scored first, and then Potlatch kind of piled it on after that. So if we look ahead to the schedule of games for this week in the 2A classification, I mean, specifically, guys, starting in the White Pine League, Kamei and Logos are gonna tangle. They're both undefeated in league play. You have Clearwater Valley playing Potlatch. And then similarly intriguing to me is Lapwai and Prairie, because these are both teams that, for Prairie, it's their conference opener. Lapwai's already 0-2 in White Pine play. Will, it's getting late early here for Lapwai a little bit.
It can. And then they had a really good showing in the first game, and then they've had a couple of games where they've struggled. But again, look at who they played. They played some pretty good teams. So sometimes it's a truly indicative thing, but look at the game right above it, the Clearwater Valley Potlatch. Potlatch is 2-0. Clearwater is 0-2. I don't think we can definitively say which team is better than the other based on who they've played to this point. So now the rubber's meeting the road, whatever analogy or simile you want to go with. This is where it really starts to track in. That Clearwater Potlatch game, very interesting. Valley Hagerman, very interesting. Murtaugh Butte County is really interesting. There are just some matchups that I think they're really going to start, the scenarios and whatnot are starting to come into focus a little bit. And I think after this week, as we've started to see some of these teams cross over and play one another, Kamei Logos, we'll have a much better, or we could have a much better read on both of those teams by the time we wake up Saturday morning. It's a really compelling week in 2A for matchups that should help define things going forward.
Yeah, and then, I'm looking at the Snake River Conference a little bit too, District 4. Raft River and Oakley, the rivalry game, that kind of speaks for itself. But Coach Kirkland, you've got Valley and Hagerman, 2 teams that have their sights set on a conference title.
Oh, this is going to be an amazing weekend. I cannot wait for the Friday Night Flash on IdahoSports.com. It's going to be amazing. I wish I could be at all of these games. We need to screen like 12 of these things at the same time so we can watch them all come to pass. But they are going to tell great stories in the state, and we'll be able to kind of start to see the lens focus a little bit more.
And for Murtaugh, they have played Grace. They have played Cary. Now they're playing Butte County. 0-3 could be in the cards there.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if you go back a couple years ago, Coach, I think before you were on the show, we talked about one year how Lighthouse Christian, I think, was 0-6. And just based on who they played, they were probably one of the top 5 teams in the state, but they were 0-6 because they played the 6 teams that might have been ahead of them, and that's it. And, that's kind of the nature of the biz. And you talked about Oakley's schedule coming up. They could be sitting at 0-5 and not really be that bad of a team. We don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Yep, yeah. All those games matter. You just got to play your best and hang in there and wait for the judges to give you your score.
Yep.
Yeah, that Lighthouse team was like, they were like 0-6, but they were still like they would have been a playoff team based on Max Prep's ranking because of the strength of schedule. And I like that. I like challenging yourself with a tough schedule, but you gotta start bankrolling a win or 2 somewhere. I mean, you can't go winless and make the playoffs, regardless of how difficult your schedule was. So for like teams like Murtaugh and Oakley, you just got to try and find a win somewhere on the schedule, and hopefully that kind of starts the snowball rolling down the hill. But man, it's going to be a fun weekend of 8-man football. I can't wait to come back here next week and break it all down again with you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun, Coach Kirkland.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and good luck to all the teams out there. Hope the ball bounces your way and you all score lots of touchdowns.
For sure. Will, are you going to try and take in a game somewhere this weekend?
I've got my eyes on a couple. I've been saying for 2 years I want to go watch Ronaldo Gomez play for Rimrock, and they're at Horseshoe Bend. So I've thought about that one. And another one that I've thought about just because I love these meet in the middle games because I live in District 3. I live in Parma. So I don't get to see some of these teams play very often. got to see Rockland play this year, got to see Kendrick and Oakley last weekend, got to see Valley and Prairie. So I'm contemplating, Coach, if you're going to go to Gooding for that Tri-Valley Mackey game, you might see me down there as well. I've kicked it around. We'll see if we can pull it off.
All right, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's going to be a fun slate of 8-man football for sure. We'll be back again next Thursday night, 7 o'clock Mountain, 6 o'clock Pacific time to break it all down for you. Howard, one last comment before we duck out. And hey, if you're watching the show and you want to be part of the conversation, you want to give a team or a player a shout out, yeah, throw it in the chat and we'll throw it up on the screen. That's what it's all about. Howard, great commentary, guys.
Josh never claimed his fries, Howard. So if you want them, they're here.
All right, there you go. The offer is on the table. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast, everybody. For the coach, Lane Kirkland, and Will Hoenike, my name is Brandon Baney. Enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.